welcome to a brand spanking new episode of the Onion Skins podcast. I'm your host, Peter Foltz. I started introducing myself last episode. I can never remember what episode number 1. This is 6. This is totally 6. Or 7. I don't know. But we have a very super special guest, friend of mine, Frankie Tamaru. Yay! I paused there because he literally had to sit me down and explain to me how to pronounce his last name correctly. I really struggle with that.
It's okay, Peter.
I'm sorry. I was embarrassed because we've known each other for a while, and I feel like I should have known how to say it by now.
It's okay.
I was mostly right. It was just I get tripped up on like the where the emphasis goes.
I don't even think about that. I feel like I'm just like I don't know. I guess it's because it's my name.
Yeah, it is your name. My name is pretty easy to pronounce. I don't think anybody's ever pronounced it incorrectly.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess I should intro you for people who don't know you, which I'm assuming most people who are listening are the people we kind of know. But Frankie, otherwise known as Francis, Frankaroni and Cheese, lover of all things cowboy.
That's true.
And I guess I don't know what to call you. I guess at this point, BFA 3 maybe. It's sort of up in the air right now because you took a gap year. You took a gap year this year.
I sure did.
So I don't know. That's part of the reason why I thought it'd be so interesting to have you on, is because we haven't had a lot of people who... I guess we have had people who have taken gap years, but I feel like everybody's experience is kind of different in light of everything that's happening. It's always cool to hear what people sort of gain or the value that they see in that. And I know that you have told me on multiple occasions that you would be more than happy to talk about espousing the benefits of taking a gap year, which we'll get into. I'm kind of putting the cart in front of the horse here. I guess before all that, I wanted to know about you, Frankie. I want to know about your background. I want to know about where you grew up and what's your favorite things and how you ended up where you are today. Where are you?
Okay. I'm in Orange County right now, living in my parents' house because this is where I grew up. So basically, yeah, I just kind of like drew the whole time I was a kid. I didn't talk to anybody at school. I just drew, and then when someone talked to me, I would like give them a one-word answer and then keep drawing. And so that's why my social skills were like really shitty up until college. So that was me. And then when I went to high school, I went to Orange County School of the Arts. So I think I credit that with me going into art, because at first I was like, I'm going to be a biologist, which is like very common in the art like community, I feel like. But then like I went to school and I was like, hey, animating's like kind of fun. And then I was like, I want to be a character designer. And then I went to college and I was like, I don't want to be a character designer. I want to just make my independent films now. So that's kind of where I'm at. Just kind of like leaving the door open for whatever collaborations or experimentations may come my way. Because I feel like school is like the time to like really harness that. Like it's like your only free time you're gonna have to do that.
Yeah, that's super cool. I saw on your Instagram the other day that you were talking about it was like on your story. I'll let you explain it, but like just about like so one of the turning points for you as far as figuring out that maybe you didn't want to just do character design, or maybe that like realizing the importance of seeing yourself as a filmmaker and making films. Do you know what I'm talking about? Or
I do know what you're talking about. So
okay.
Basically, is it the one where I like gushed about Joni?
Yeah, it's the one we gushed about Joni.
Okay, so if you don't know, Joni Phillips is an independent filmmaker who just graduated from CalArts last year from experimental, and we met in high school, and she was 2 years above me, but like we were friends, and she's just always been a really big inspiration to me for like obvious reasons. If you like know her work, she's like really self-motivated and gets a lot done and really pushes the medium like story-wise, technique-wise, like animation, just like in every aspect. Like she made about an hour and a half's worth of work in like 4 years of college, but she's kind of been like a big sister to me or like a mentor. And so I started my animation, like, I don't know, career or interest kind of just drawing like people. And I didn't really have a purpose with it. I wasn't like trying to say anything. And then like, I think as I was starting to notice what Joni was doing, I was like, oh, this is like a statement, very personal and forceful. And like, I think that was kind of around the time of me like starting to understand how film worked, like how it was just kind of like this limitless art form that could be basically anything you wanted. And I was like, okay, now I want to do that.
Yeah, that's super cool. I think like that's one of the big striking revelations that I think I had upon entering CalArts, is that like I didn't really have an idea or like a desire to be a filmmaker, really. Like, I know that sounds silly, but like I, even because I went to film school, but I feel like that was just to service like me being a story artist or something, which I still want to do. I don't think I really saw the value in my own films, or the value in making something that's greater than the sum of its parts, prior to going to school or being exposed to people who that was definitely the case for, and seeing people who were making like films that were like really quick. And oftentimes they weren't focused on design or even like stellar animation, but they were focused on like making a mood and like trying to sell a feeling in the most economic way possible, which I thought was super stellar. And I always wanted to be a part of that. It's really hard, but I definitely get what you're saying when you talk about like that transition.
Okay, so I think the most interesting thing about films is that it's less about like what you're watching, but it's more about like this is made by a person. So it's like, I don't know, sometimes like when you watch a film, it's less about, oh, how interesting that character did that or whatever. It's more about, oh, this is someone's experience. It's crazy that an actual person made this because it's so...
No, I totally get it. It's like that, like they're bearing their soul in front of you, and you're just sort of there witnessing a part of themselves that is inside just becoming manifest, and you're able to like watch it and view it.
Exactly. It's like you're not watching a video, you're like meeting a person.
Yeah. I think that's really cool. I think that's also part of like almost like the purest form of independent filmmaking. Like obviously I think there's a lot of really great benefits to having people's eyes on things and like having their hands in like a project to make it better. But there's also something really special about something being completely and wholly yours, or belonging to a specific person. You know, because everything about that film screams something about somebody's personality, or like something about what they're dealing with or something. In some cases, that's not always like moody or anything, but it is like a unique fingerprint that is specifically them. That I think you kind of lose when you have a lot of people working on a project.
Yeah, definitely. And then it's like so fun to see like little nuances of how characters handle like certain events or like other people. And it like slowly, you can build this library of who this person is. Like even if it's not like the topic of the film, you can kind of infer it by like how the characters interact. Like what jokes they think are funny tells a lot about a person. Or like you can tell a lot from like one frame, like a person's inspirations, their ideas on things, basically who they are.
Yeah, no, totally. I kind of wanted to circle back to the you know, I mentioned that you took a gap year this year, and unique in the sense that I'm not trying to like slam dunk on you or anything, but did you see? I'm not gonna slam dunk.
Can't wait to hear what you say.
I'm just gonna say like you left without like much of like a like a net underneath you. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm sorry. No.
You're so right. I think when you said that, I just imagine I'm like a trapeze artist and like I'm swinging right, and everyone else is like, oh, I'm gonna jump onto this net, and I'm like falling towards the ground, and if I don't build myself a net really fast, I'm just gonna crash and burn. But you're right.
Yeah, because the last episode we recorded was with Chris and Jess, and Chris left because they had employment at Cartoon Network, and Issa took a gap semester, I guess, that's turning into a gap year because of an opportunity at Cartoon Network. I don't think we often hear about people who maybe took a gap year to work through, I guess, creative... I don't want to speak for you, so I'm just going to ask you what was sort of your the reasoning behind why you maybe took a gap year?
I think I realized that what I wanted to do changed, but not in such a dramatic way that I'm leaving like the animation or film industry, obviously, but I got a better idea of what the character program does, and I was like, okay, this is like a good program, but more if you want to do, I think, like character design or storyboarding, and not like really making your own stories, but learning the techniques of how to turn a script into like boards, which is like very useful, obviously. That was like around the time I realized I wanted to make independent film, and like the character program is not really designed for that. It's kind of the experimental program, so it's kind of like I'm trying to reap the benefits of both aspects of filmmaking, I think. I definitely applied for character because I was like, I want to learn how to make designs, I want to learn how to storyboard, I want to learn how to have good draftsmanship and such. But then I don't think the program really focuses much on your personal voice or expanding on different techniques or drawing inspiration from different sources. So at that point I was like, okay, this is a good program, but I do want to focus on other things. It was like April of last year, I started having the idea for my current film that I'm making right now. And I was like, I know I can make this, but I can't do it while I'm going to school because it's half an hour long. It takes a lot of self-trust, obviously, because you have to make things without a curriculum and you have to make things without a schedule for like being told to you. So it took a lot of self-managing, which I think has helped me learn a lot. But yeah, this film has been super interesting because, yeah, I'm making everything on my own, which is like what everybody at CalArts does for their films. Like, you know, you make the whole process yourself, but on steroids because I have to like enlist a whole production team to color 30 minutes of shots. You know, I have to manage like the music team, the coloring team, the texture team, the character design team, and I have to like get production helpers to help me with production. I had to write a 25-page script. I had to like make a 30-minute animatic. I had to make like somewhere between 20 and 30 character designs, not even including like background characters. So I feel like my boarding skills have gotten better, and my animation skills gotten better, and my time management skills gotten better. So it's like I'm still learning, but I have to make my own schedule and figure out everything by myself because there's like basically no help. But I think I've gotten like way stronger because of it. Yeah, it's been like a really good experience, and like honestly, I don't regret taking a gap year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like what sort of mindset do you think like works for that? Because like I for me right now, I'm not like, I guess I should probably work on something. I don't work on much these days.
That's
but
totally
like,
fine.
I mean, it kind of like makes me a little scared for what this year would look like, because I think I'm probably going to be taking a gap year more than likely. And I don't have much of a net, as a lot of other people who are presumably also taking gap years this coming year are kind of feeling. With that in mind, what sort of mindset do you think, like, I guess has worked for you for making a film, or just maybe even just improving yourself in general for this year?
I have so much to say about this, as you know.
Yeah.
I think, I don't know, I can obviously not speak for everybody's like processes, but like for me, my process is like definitely absorbing the world in a way where like you look at like, how can I utilize this for my art? I don't know, like just listening to films, like sound design has made me 1,000 times more perceptive to like just real world sounds, and like if like just looking at certain like, I don't know, trees, looking out the window, like seeing lighting, you're like, oh, I can totally see how this is like applicable to a film. And like life experiences and other art and just like images or things you hear on the news, like literally anything could be used for art. And I think the interesting thing is that I think a good artist or filmmaker can make good art out of anything. You know, being able to see how something that's seemingly mundane may have a rich history or some sort of interesting thing about it, because everything does, you know, and like it's just like which things draw you to it the most. You know, I feel like everybody has a billion interests, but you may not necessarily like look at it like something that you could use for your own art. But I think it's just like everybody has an opinion on things, and it's like, well, what do you want to talk about? I feel like art is like a game almost, where you're like building a set of rules for yourself and then you're just like kind of following it and like filling it in with spaces. I'm trying to make like this emotion, so like what would go in that spot, and like I'm trying to make this commentary on this specific topic, so what would I put there? And then like once you roll it all together, it's like a film. I forgot what the question was, but I hope I answered it. Oh, so wait, no. I remember the question. Okay, so that's my advice. It's like, for the film I have now, I wrote 50 pages of notes. But
I've seen
this
them. Yeah, it's insane how many notes that you took for this film.
Okay, yeah, and I'm working on my next film after this film also, and I already have notes for that, even though it won't be released until like years from now probably. Every time you have a mental click, like, write it down immediately, because, like, as soon as you have that whole board in front of you, you can just be like, okay, I'm gonna pick this, and this, and this, and this, and then, like, whoa, the film just made itself because of my own thoughts. I think thought recording is very important whenever I see something where I'm like, oh, that could be a comic, or, oh, that's, like, a topic I should expand on, or, like, I want to research this. I just, like, write it down somewhere. You just have this giant library you can pull from.
Yeah, I've tried to do that, but I think it oftentimes just is nonsense after I come back to it. I'm like, what was I said something here, but I'm not sure exactly what it was.
Make it coherent.
I can't do that. I've read through your notes. Your notes are not always very good. I mean, they might make sense to you, but I've read through them. It's just bullet points of, like,
but
questions.
See, I
like,
understand it, so...
You understand it. That's all that matters.
That is all that matters.
Yeah, I think, yeah, your film that you're making right now is really crazy, and really cool, because you sort of talk to me about it. It's about dreams. It's about that melancholy sort of sensation you get from waking up and having some dream that accesses an emotion that you wouldn't otherwise feel in your waking life. And I think that's really cool and a really hard thing to try and nail down. And so you were collecting all this data, I guess, I don't know how else to say data, but just like stories or people's experiences. You and I both keep dream journals. Mm-hmm. I talked about this with Issa a couple episodes ago, but I never get tired of talking about it, because I think it's really important for people who are making films and are interested in expanding, I guess, the way that they tell stories, to record their dreams. And you are, I guess, in the most literal sense, trying to tap into directly the thing that makes dreams so special in this film. It's crazy. So much happens. I don't know how much has changed since the last draft that I read back in April. I don't want to spoil it, I guess. Or not April. I read it back in probably March. Man, it's been a while. Mm-hmm. But I wanted to, I guess, delve into that, like the idea of using dreams for making comics and poetry and stories and stuff like that, and how you feel like that sort of impacted your own writing.
Oh, I'd love to talk.
Boy. Here we go. Frankie's about to go off.
Oh my god. Okay. This is like... I feel like, okay, obviously people are going to like roll their eyes when I say this. It's a misconception to say that dreams are not real. Because dreams are a reaction to your life, and a reaction is real, you know, and a feeling is real, and like when you wake up, you still remember it. It goes all the way from the literal sensation of like, oh, I literally talked to this person in my dream who I'm, like, nervous about in real life, and I got so scared in my dream. It's, like, very literal stuff like that, but then there's other points where, like, you can decipher it as in different ways. I was doing this a while back, but I was starting to kind of record different people's dreams, because I was trying to, like, not like study, but kind of like look into how people dream differently, because dreams are not only like a reflection of ourselves, but how we dream. It's like the structure, not the like concept of the dream. So like some people dream in black and white, some people die in their dreams, some people don't die in their dreams, and like I feel like that's all very indicative of like the person. And I think it's so interesting how dreams are a lot like film. You can tell a lot about what you're thinking and like how you see the world by what you dream about, and like how you dream, and like to what extent like certain things go. So I think like for me it's just like so easy, or like not like so easy, but it's just like, oh, this is like so easily transferable. I don't even have to think of anything, you know? No brainstorming has to be had. The only thing that you have to brainstorm is how to make it super accessible to the audience so that they can understand what you're trying to say. And like, I mean, maybe you don't want it to be accessible, and that's, like, a stylistic choice. But, like, I think, like, when you have art, you have to have two like, things down. One is that you have to have, like, a good idea. And the second, like part of it is you have to get that idea across well. And I feel like dreams just like give you the idea because your brain is like full raw mode. And then your waking self is like the part that is like, okay, how can I make this like so other people actually understand it?
Yeah. Yeah. I think I think it's so interesting because like, yeah, there's like an emotion or a sensation that you feel in your dreams that's uniquely you, but also is almost experienced by in a similar way to every other person who's ever existed. There's something very unique and also unifying about dreams, like sort of like Carl Jung's like collective unconscious idea that we all have like these impulses and ideas that are like they inherent to the structure of our brains and like just mankind, and yet it feels so uniquely us, and yet it's not something that feels like it's very like tapped into as far as like a concept. It's very heady. I don't want to like alienate anybody in the audience, but like that's I don't know. It's definitely something that's interesting to me to think about, like how our brains just naturally sort of crave to put structure to our emotions, and that's just sort of what a story is. Like, and the way that I've sort of come to understand stories is like, I don't know, you're not really trying to convey necessarily a plot all the time. Like the plot almost feels secondary to what was really happening in a story, which is that you're trying to impart an emotion or an emotional experience onto somebody. Because a story without any of those things, any emotion, is like just boring. Like who wants to watch that? Like I don't know. I'm rambling, but I can tell that you're on the edge of your seat, just ready to start talking again. So lay it on me, Francis.
Okay, yeah. I just love talking about this stuff. I was like thinking about the podcast earlier. I was like, I feel like Peter would love to talk about like just all this stuff. I think it's so funny. I was just like thinking earlier today, like the whole point of art is just to get an emotion across. Even if you watch, I don't know. The first movie that comes to mind is Chicken Little. But like I watched Chicken Little and it's not grand or anything, but I was like laughing the whole time, right? So like does that make it better than something that's like high concept but doesn't make me laugh at all? Like if I fall asleep during like a super high concept movie, what was the purpose of that, you know? Yeah, just like the first thing is emotion. I think it's interesting, Disney films, like they get emotion across. It's like, oh, I'm gonna cry, that was so cute, I'm so happy. But there's like a billion other ways to just make someone feel something. You know that like painting that's just a black square? It's like, well, if you still feel something, you know, there's so many like roads to go down.
Yeah, I think like I don't know what I thought about storytelling or the art of storytelling or the art of doing any sort of art, honestly. Like I was reading some poetry by John Keats. I sound like such a pretentious jerk right now. I hate the way I sound. Anyway, I like poetry sometimes. I like poetry, but I was reading some Keats, and I like some of the sonnets that he would write are these like terribly like heartfelt sonnets, but they're only like a few lines because the sonnets are, you know, just short poems. And I was like, that is the most economic way that I have ever experienced somebody saying something to me that made me feel something. Like that is just so like the purpose of poetry, I feel like in that, or sonnets at least, and like short films, anything like that, is like economy. It's really trying to like get you in a place emotionally or in a place mentally with as few words as possible, or it just as quickly as it can, because the longer that it drags on, the less effect that it has and the less potent it feels. And that's where the art comes in. That's like something that I didn't even sort of click in my head until like last year or something, and it's really sort of like helped me break away from the sort of dichotomy I've been feeling in my head about storytelling, where I'm like, I was in school and I learned about Save the Cat. I don't know if you've ever read that book. Everybody who is an actual writer, like they always like, gosh, I hate that book, but you know what, it's important to know. It's like basically like the tenets, like the 10 commandments basically of writing a story. You have like the author, why am I forgetting his name? Blake Snyder basically like details like, all right, the beginning is this part, and then at around the 20-minute mark, it's very formulaic, like how he tells you to make a story. And I took a class that was a semester where I had to write a whole feature length by the Blake Snyder Save the Cat. It was miserable. I hated it. And like, and when I came to Cal Arts, I like had this real inner turmoil where I was like, this is not how I should be writing a story, but like it felt more right to reach in and intuitively tell it. like rely on sort of my own emotional sense of timing, because I feel like there's that clock inside of you, everybody, that like tells you when you want to hit that emotional beat and when it's like when it would affect you the most to put this in, not necessarily at the 15-minute mark or the 30-minute or whatever, like Blake Snyder would say. So I think that's something that's really helped me. It's just like the idea of economy in filmmaking. And I think that that's like something you do really well, because I went back and I watched all of your stuff on Vimeo. And you do that really well.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah. I think it's also cool how like versatile they are. Like all your films look they look different from each other. I know like sometimes you see people's films over the years and they evolve in ability wise, but not necessarily stylistically. They don't sort of change. I didn't get a lot out of and I shouldn't say that. I felt like I didn't get much out of like Pashot Hunt's class in design. Like I feel like maybe I needed to be in it longer, but the thing I did get out is that, like, you know, he says that style is not the way that you draw, but a way that you see the world, and I think that's super true. And I think it's something it's like really well exemplified in all the films that you make, where they're all done in different media and they're all animated so differently, but they still feel uniquely you. My question would be, how do you sort of go about deciding that for whatever film that you... Yeah, I know, this is hard. This is kind of a loaded question.
No, I was going to say I'm so excited to...
Oh, okay, then yeah.
I love answering this question so much, because it's like... I mean, it's kind of along the same things that we've said before, but it's just like seeing the inherent beauties and restrictions of different mediums. I think like my biggest thing right now is I love mixed media, because you can get all of those inherent qualities in the same film. And I think the biggest thing that I always say this, but 2D hand-drawn animation in TV Paint or something, right? You can literally make any visual like thing you can literally comprehend, and that's kind of amazing, because like in live action you can't do that. Like you can't stretch guys like neck like 3 feet long or something, and then like he whips around and like he hits a rock that stays in the air for 3 seconds, you know, like and that's like not even like, that's just thinking about everything in a very literal way. But you can just like make abstract shit, you can just literally do anything, and that's like I think the inherent beauty of like 2D, right? But the drawback is that you can't improv anything. I mean, everyone knows this, but you have to storyboard and like write, because you can't just like do another take in live action. But like in live action there will be these like beautiful moments where like some girl is giving her monologue and then like a bird lands like behind her on a tree, and it like, holy shit, this pair just landed while we were filming, you know, like you can't get that in 2D, because it's like you have to think about putting the parrot there. Yeah,
spontaneity is you know, like there's that's something people struggle with all the time, and myself included. Like there's such a lack of spontaneity, or even if you try to fight against it, like you still kind of have to just go with it in some ways. Like there's very little of that spontaneity that you have when you're in the character animation department. At least I'm sure it's less of a constraint in the experimental, or it's something that they take into consideration probably a little bit more than people in character. But yeah, definitely something that's super hard.
Yeah. And like, and then just like quickly I was gonna say, like, I think that stop motion, I love stop motion because it's kind of like a tie between those, because there'll be like, oh, there's a little hair on this frame and then it moves over here, and then like, oh, I accidentally dropped this bead on this frame, but it's there, you know, like, so there's a spontaneity, but also you have the control of how the characters or like things move, so it's like a happy medium. And you get that like live action feeling of like there's like an actual physical light shining on this material and it looks different than how it shines on this other material. That's what I would say about different mediums, is like I'm trying to find ways to use all of them, because each of them have their own inherent beauties and upsides.
I would say definitely the way that I think artists, especially people working in animation, are able to engage with spontaneity in their filmmaking is through using real media. I think like I took a class last semester, or fall of this past year, with Bridget Berger, who is the illustration for animators teacher. The class was really great, and it was surprisingly not what I thought it was going to be. Basically, it's just illustrating a children's book, but John Klassen, who's like this brilliant. He's like one of my favorite children's book artists right now. That the whole time he comes in and just for one class and he gives us like a lecture on reusing real media and the importance of it, sort of, and the beauty in not being able to control everything and how it makes it feel more genuine and real. Like there's a thing, there's just, you can't capture that. You can't capture how real media looks. No matter like what kind of Photoshop brush you're using, there's just always going to be that disconnect where you know that that's not real. It's not real media. And it feels planned. And like, it's really hard for a lot of animators to accept using real media or using something that they don't have complete control over, because animation is such a game of control, I feel like 90% of the time. But yeah, it's something I struggle with too. I don't enjoy, like I always feel self-conscious. I feel good about myself after I've made something with real pencils, but I'm like, oh man, that could have been better if I just did it digitally. But that's not the point. That's not the point.
Oh my gosh, there's so many jumping off points from that. I think one is like in the film I'm doing right now, I kind of like the other day I animated this shot and it was cut off at the top, like I cut off the top of Lonnie's head, and I was like, well, if this was on film back in like the 40s, like they'd be like, well, we're not reshooting that. So I just like rolled with it because I was like, I don't know, I can pretend to have spontaneity in that moment. Like, whoops, I cut off his like arm a little. It's like when you animate, it's like, don't have a tangent, but then it's like you can see how planned it is. But yeah, also, and then like one quick thing about real medium, the Kyle Photoshop brushes are like a man's interpretation of a brush stroke made into computer code and then put into like so it's like there's like 3 filters on that concept of like a brush. But then if you just use the like if you actually take ink and put it across a paper, then there's only like 1 filter on it, which is that the fact that it was captured by a camera in certain lighting, right? You're getting rid of how many middlemen there are, I feel like, you know?
Yeah, no, totally.
Yeah.
I really like the way that you use graphite in that short film that you did, Pearson and Medusa. I thought that was really great.
Thank
you. That was your 1 week, right?
No, it was my first year at CalArts. I made a film and I immediately hated it. So 1 week before the end of the year, I made another one to make up for the other one I hated.
Wow. Okay, wait. So the pond was the actual one that you made and then hated.
Yeah, I like made it as like, this is a combination of first year like jitters and my teachers telling me what to do and like me having expectations for myself. I made that back in first semester, right? But I've like grown a lot in the past semester. So I was like, I have to show people like what I really feel like I'm like after this like last semester, and that was Pearson and Medusa, which is like obviously not like the most well animated thing, but like I think it came from a very honest like emotional place, and you know, it was like very good practice like working with timing for the dialogue and like also animating on paper and having a week to do it.
I think it was phenomenal. I think you did a great job with that, and it feels definitely like uniquely like your voice. Like the pond is like, it still has your voice in there obviously, but I can tell like that it kind of exchanged some hands probably before the end of production. It's still a really great film, and it still definitely feels like you, but I think Pearson and Medusa was just really great. It's fun. It feels spontaneous. It feels like it has energy to it, which is another thing. Like, I think that's what real media does. It like injects energy into your film. I have a tendency to use the lasso tool a lot in like Photoshop. I need to stop. But I feel like it like removes life out of my drawings when I do things like that. I'm trying to stop and figure out better ways. But I'm not trying to like crap on like digital art or anything, because I think I do it all the time. I think it's still important. But yeah, I don't know. Yeah, no. Pearson and Medusa, especially like the scenes with the snake and like moving around. I'm like, oh, that's so cool. I have no idea where I would start with that paper, but it's really cool.
Thank you. Wait, one thing I have to say about the lasso tool is I think it's cool like when you do something like that, because the evidence of your personal voice and your hand is combined with the voice of a computer, but it's also you, and it makes this really interesting thing at sometimes like where people are like, whoa, that's a new thing I've never seen before. So I mean, you could do it if you want, but also
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I just gotta get out of my own head. I think a lot of times, like, I just sit there and I think about things a lot. I think about things like this all the time. I don't really have an outlet for them, and I don't really have like an application. So I don't know. I just I like talking about it in reference to other people's stuff more than anything, because it's like reads so much clearer to me what some other person is doing rather than what I'm doing. I've found a lot of times I feel like I know my work the least well. But I think a lot of artists kind of feel that way. Everybody thinks that they don't have a style, but immediately, most of the time, somebody can point out what drawing is a Frankie drawing, or what drawing is a Peter drawing, or what drawing is like a Ty or a Sanjana drawing.
Yeah, no, definitely.
But yeah, I wanted to kind of circle back then and talk a little bit about the sort of process for writing something like Lonnie, because I think that's super interesting, the approach you took. I'm sitting here right now because my dad told me, like last week, he said, I think you should spend the summer making a pilot for a television show. That way, if it ever gets picked up, you won't have to work anymore. I'm not going to go into why that isn't correct, but I started doing it anyways because I thought it'd be a good practice. And just the process of trying to figure out something to write about is difficult in and of itself, let alone how to make that thing complex and have room for growth. Which I think that from what I read of Lonnie is really where it shines. It feels really like poignant and deep, and like there's a lot of different directions that it can go in. So I kind of wanted to know about sort of where you sort of started, like you started with your 50-page thing of ideas, and then sort of like how that moves and how you sort of gauge the success of something like that, because it does feel very like unlike a conventional film. And so how do you sort of gauge the success of what you're writing?
Okay. I think there's a few questions in there, but like, yeah, I will...
I'm sorry.
No,
yeah,
it's okay.
I ramble. I'm really sorry.
No, it's okay. No, I love talking about this also. Okay, so I think I'm gonna go like very quickly back and reference Pearson and Medusa, because you know how the whole thing's like narration, right? That was like me sitting on the couch one day, and I was like, oh, what if there's a girl named Medusa or something? And it was like stupid because it's like, well, it doesn't mean anything. You just like you have a girl and you name it Medusa. But like I just like wrote this really short story while I was sitting down, and I was like, hey, this is actually like pretty good. What if I made it into a film? So I just unedited just like turned it into a film. None of my writing is actually thought out in a way that's, I don't think, okay, it's time to make a film, like what should I make a film about? It's more like something has happened to me and I'm like, oh, I can adapt this for a film. Back in high school, I remember I was like, I had to make a film to apply for like CISA. I was like, okay, what's funny? What'll get people? Dogs. People love dogs. So then I made a film about a dog chasing a ball, and it was like the most like bland tasting thing I'd ever watched, looking back on it. But I was like 15, so it's okay. But now I don't really approach it that way. It's like more about like what I see in the world that like really makes me feel something, whether it's a style of music. You know that I love 50s or like indie, whatever, rock. And then it's like I also love old vintage stuff, and I love, you know, so it's like I had a conceptual idea and I was like, okay, well, what things from my life do I think would go like complement that? Like obviously rock concerts are not the way to approach just like very delicate film, right? So it's like, well, I love old west cowboy stuff, right? I love carnival clowns. You know, I love the ocean and nature. So, like, those are, like, the visual and, like, I don't know, like, physical things that are going into the film. But, yeah, it's all that stuff is decided based upon certain feelings and, like, certain themes. And I think for this, like, film that we're talking about right now, the themes are kind of about just this very, you know, bittersweetness, how beautiful the world is, but also sad it is. I think, like, one of the main, like, if I had to put a song to it, it's like Connie Converse, How Sad, How Lovely, and she's like watching the sunset, and it's like the most gorgeous thing you could think of, right? But it's also sad because it means like it's the end of the day, and I think that's like the closest probably to the feeling that I'm trying to get. So like once I had a feeling, I was like, okay, well, what character am I going to put in here? And I was like, well, I'm going to make him trans because that's a part of my identity. Everything I write is about myself, like whether it's like a parent or not. And it's like, I think everyone should, because like, what are you doing writing about someone else? Like, you're not even that person. How are you supposed to make better art than them if you're not even that person? You know what I'm saying? I just can't write about the experience of being like, I don't know, a New Yorker or something, because I've never lived there. It's like, why would you do that? So I'm kind of just like, time to make stuff about my own experience, and it's like these feelings of being like, disconnected from people, but also feeling like there's this other theme that like dreams are very real, which I already talked to you about. And so how can I make this into a film? And so it kind of starts out with brainstorming. It's like, okay, I love the imagery of carnivals. I love the idea that there's someone above us watching what we're doing, but doesn't know what it's like to be human because they're a god. And it's like a very different experience, you know, to be just watching what we're doing versus like being us and doing what we're doing. So it's like that. And then there's just like, you know, you kind of like brainstorm things and you're like, okay, wait a minute. It's like, how do I convey that message? And it's like, well, it'd be powerful if I started out this way, where it's like, you know, he's very alone, and then it's like he gets a taste of what it's like to like not be alone. You know, it's like you kind of put together, and it's like, what can create the most impactful payoff, basically. Or I think the way that I write things is I think like, what is gonna make people cry so hard that they're like in like pain and like can't think, and like, you know, it's like you're going for the like the whole, was it 10 yards or something? Do you know what I'm talking about? You're going for the whole shebang.
Yeah,
like you don't, it's like if a character's super vulnerable, it's like, and to hit the low point you have to get that vulnerability up, and then you have to destroy it. And then, like, how are you going to redeem it? Are you going to redeem it? I think you were talking previously in another, like, podcast or something about, like, how you write the end first. And I think, yeah. I think that's something you should do. The beginning is just a whole plot for the end, because, like, the end is the whole goal. If you're saying, like, oh, I want to make a film about sadness, it's like, well, in the end, like, he's going to be sad, right? He's not going to be happy, because that's not what you're trying to say. So it's like, well, if we're trying to make him sad by the end, well, for it to be the most powerful and most painful, you have to make him happy first. So it's like, you know, and then it's like, yeah, like you said, just working backwards. Like, Lonnie basically starts out, he's like very sheltered, and he's like scared of like interacting with people and getting hurt, whatever. This is a very common story. Someone reaches out to him, he becomes vulnerable. That vulnerability is destroyed. He's at his very lowest place, but then he comes back up. This is basically the story. That's how I write. It's like, if you're gonna make a story about sadness, you have to like, what's the opposite of that? You have to like destroy it and then come back up.
Yeah, it's all about arcs. Everything is arcs. If animation has taught you nothing, everything is arcs. You move in arcs. Your life sort of moves in like these emotional arcs, ups and downs, peaks and valleys. Everything is like that. Sound is like that. Sound extols the virtues of waves.
Yes. Sorry, I love. Yeah. No, I'm not even gonna. I'm just gonna keep going on tangents.
No, I think that it's also important to note that, like, I kind of wanted to rein it in a little bit.
Okay, yeah.
You go off.
Sorry,
off,
I do.
I think it's really cool. I think you're totally on the nose when you say that, like, you should be talking about your experiences. But I think a lot of people, including myself, get tripped up on the idea that, like, well, I don't know what it's like to be, like, I don't know, as an example, I don't know what it's like to be a man who lives on an island. I don't know what it's like to be a FedEx guy who gets his ship or his plane gets marooned on an island and he washes up and he has a volleyball best friend. You don't have to have lived that experience to know what it's like to be alone. You know what I mean? What makes that movie so good is that, you know, you're able to access an emotion that's real that you've experienced. And I think that's also circling back to dreams. Like, that's another way that we experience emotions, but it's one that we often sort of discount or discredit because it's not tied to any sort of logic oftentimes. But yeah, I don't know. I think it expands your ability to tell stories when you realize that you should be able to connect most things in life to an experience that you've had. Most things, not all things, but
I want to talk about the Castaway reference. Okay,
yeah.
So it's only about the experience if it's, like, integral about why you're feeling this way. So it's like, if being an Asian person in America is why the film is being driven forward and, like, why the main emotions of the film are being driven forward, then, like, a white person should not do it. But it's like, when you're on an island, that's not why. The island is, like, a metaphor for loneliness, which is, like...
Yeah, no, I get it. Yeah, there are experiences that obviously are inaccessible to you for cultural reasons. And then there are experiences that may seem inaccessible to you for practical reasons, I guess. Like the ability to, like, I've never been marooned on an island before, so I don't know. But I also Yeah, I mean, but
then
you're
you talk
informed
to
by
people
that,
who
but
have.
it's not like necessarily something that
Like, you have to research.
I don't know.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
You're tying it then to not necessarily the experience.
Yeah.
You're like, you're not trying to access that part in somebody's brain where they're like, oh my gosh, that was totally
Yeah.
like when I was trapped on an island. Like you're trying. The goal is different, I think. But if the goal
Yeah.
is to accurately or to represent what it's like to be that person, then you should probably be that person. Be yourself. That's the way you make good films. And I think that's really an important thing. Also, I kind of forgot to mention this in the episodes where I talk about writing, which is like almost every episode. But I think it's like super important for me to start out with like a inspiration jumping off point, like something really concise. Like you were talking, I was reminded of it because you talked about Connie Converse, who's like, for people who don't know, she's like this super amazing folk singer who had a very sort of short-lived career, and she wrote a letter saying that she was never going to come back, and nobody ever saw her again. She just drove off. We don't know what happened to her or what her deal is, but she writes these really sad and oftentimes very beautiful, or always beautiful songs, and I think that was a really great jumping off point for you. For me, sometimes I like to write like a short piece of poetry, or like find a short story that I really like, or a song. And I think that's a really interesting challenge for a lot of writers too, is to figure out how to translate that from one medium to the medium of filmmaking. So yeah, I don't know what your experience with that has been. Sort of like how do you sort of suck out that Connie juice? I hate that what I just said, but like how do you sort of like reduce that, and then I know, how do you sort of like
very Peter of you,
reduce it and then add it to your film stew?
Yeah, I mean, this is gonna sound repetitive, but again, just like the core emotion. When I first found that song, I just played it on repeat and cried the entire time. Every single time I'm like, why am I crying? And then like you kind of like have to pick it apart. Yeah, it's like when you have an emotional impact that you want to convey, it's like, how many things can you layer to get that impact? And I think it's like, you know, obviously Connie singing is like gorgeous. In some of the recordings, there's like a guy who like, you can tell he's in the room with her, and he's like, how about you play Two Tall Mountains? And then she's, you know, just like the idea that a friend's in your home is like that, and then you add just like the imagery of the sunset, which like that alone is enough to make anybody cry, you know? You kind of pick it apart and you're like, okay, what am I drawn to? What can I use in my film? From that, like maybe it's just the emotional state, but for me, like I literally put so many sunsets in my film because I'm like, this is the core like origin of like this feeling, and it's like so easy to just put in. It's not like I'm this super finessed like idea that I'm stealing from or something. It's universal.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting thing, the way that you look at like a song, because like there is so much that goes into it beyond the lyrics of a song, and how you use that as sort of a jumping off point for your films. Is like there's the way that it sounds. Like it could be a happy sounding song with a lot of sort of major chords or whatever. I'm not a musician. I don't know music theory very well. But then there's that mixed with like the nature of the lyrics. Are they sad lyrics? Are they happy lyrics? And how that sort of relationship makes things complicated. The sort of what is it like recorded on? Is it like this cheap mic? I think it's what I like about folk punk. I hate that I just said that. But I used to love folk punk in high school, and I still kind of do love it. But the idea of it is like these are like these poor grungy people that are like, I want to make punk music, but I can't afford an amp, so I'm just going to use my acoustic guitar and this jug, and I'm going to record it into this $10 snowball mic into my Mac. And there's something about that that enriches the experience of you having listened to it. Something that I think every filmmaker should kind of analyze their inspirations like that and figure out how that they can take that and apply it to their own, and as far as making it multi-layered, because there's so much that goes into that Connie Converse song that makes it unique. Like it wouldn't feel the same if she was playing it on like a harpsichord, or if she was playing that song like on like an electric guitar or something. Like it would feel completely different.
No, yeah, wait, I was just gonna jump off that and say like, I don't know, like because when I took art history in like high school, like I remember the first thing my teacher said is like, you have to know the historical context of things. And I think that really applies to our conversation, because I remember being like a teenager in high school and I was like, hey, who cares? It looks pretty. And then like realizing like this guy painted it in jail after being in there for like 17 years or something, you know, like, and like it like really changes things. But yeah, going off of that, yeah.
Yeah. No, yeah, understanding like the richness, not just like on the surface, the importance of things, but like their importance culturally and to other things, it really enriches your understanding and like your ability to find creative solutions for your own story. I think that's why I also like the idea of like putting my ideas together. Like right now, like I said, I'm trying to work on this thing, and all I did was I wrote down like a list of things that I'm interested in and with subcategories of things specifically of that category that I really like. So I wrote down like musicals and all the musicals that I really like I don't know, Dancer in the Dark. Have you seen Dancer in the Dark?
No.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so that's my
Okay.
music. That's my recommendation for the week. My
Okay.
sister actually showed me that movie. It's with Bjork,
Oh.
Icelandic pop singer Bjork,
Mm-hmm.
and it's got Peter Stormare in it, who I love. It's like a musical. It's very sad. Anyways, sorry, that's my plug for that. But the idea of like putting these different things. So I had musicals in here, but I also have Secret Hideouts, Bones, and I have like the list up right now, and boring retail places. I love boring retail places. Like think like just empty, abandoned retail spaces. But like none of those things are alike. But like I know that there's some connection that can be drawn there. That's really interesting. And we had a writer for television come in and substitute for one of the classes I was in on screenwriting. Actually, you met her, Amalia.
Oh yeah.
With the writer's room, and I think she had a really cool point. I don't know how often she actually does this, but like if you're sort of stuck with a story or it feels like it's lacking depth, then like take the ideas that you have and distill them, and then add in the concept behind a random Wikipedia page article, playing around with that. The idea is that like something that is completely unlike the other two things that you might have in your story. You know what I mean? I thought that was really interesting. I'm trying to do that now, but it's proving to be really difficult. But anyways, I just, all that to say, I think it's important to like basically, if I had to distill this conversation, I think it's like really important to like understand your influences and to really understand them,
Mm-hmm.
and to realize that those things are like not that far removed from the art of filmmaking and the process of storytelling.
Yeah.
I think that it's so easy to see that like maybe I don't know, my interests are like poetry. It's easy to say that like that's so different from filmmaking, and it is for a lot of reasons, but I also think that there's a lot that is crossed over there. And I think that having these conversations with you helps me immensely in that way. Like I always feel really like I'm enlightened, like I'm in like one of those French salons like from like the 18th century or something, whenever we chat or make music or whatever.
Oh yeah.
I feel like that's another point that can be made, is that like also like having interests outside of drawing is important too. Like you and I we've only done it a couple times, but that was because of the unfortunate circumstances that we're in currently.
Yeah.
But making music is like such a nice thing to help you kind of remove yourself
Yeah.
from drawing, I think. I don't know. What do you think that any sort of like, there are any sort of things in your life that maybe help you get perspective or draw you away from drawing, but like ultimately help you in the long run?
I mean, this is not a creative answer at all, but just my favorite thing is to watch movies, so no surprise
No,
there.
that's good.
My schedule's like 24/7 drawing my film, so it's like kind of hard to like get into other stuff right now, but I'm kind of trying to research things for my next film, which I won't talk about too much because it's still in like really, really early whatever production, idea stage, but I think that's another interest, maybe just like reading about things or like referencing like images or collections of things that I may want to base my art off of or have interest in, but mostly watching movies, I would say.
Cool. On that note, we are sort of nearing the end here, and we usually end off by like, I guess, talking about any sort of recommendations that you might have for people, things that you think people should really be on, like if you are really into Club Penguin or something, or if you really are like into a video game or movie or TV show or anything like that.
I don't know if you guys have heard of Webkins. No, just kidding.
Oh.
Sorry, you said Club Penguin. Obviously, Joni, watch out for that, because she's making she's gonna have made 2 feature films at the end of this year, which is like kind of crazy, blowing my mind. There's that, but then also, I guess I'll like plug my favorite movies. Like my favorites are probably like The Tale of Princess Kaguya and My Own Private Idaho and The Master. I recently saw this adaptation of Alice from like 1988 that's stop motion, and I thought it was the most beautiful thing ever because it's oh my gosh, I forgot his name, but it's this animator who makes these gorgeous like lifelike, it's like a stuffed rabbit, but he's wearing like this beautiful coat and it interacting with a live action like girl, so it's like feels like you're immersed in it. And I think one of the most interesting things is that it has absolutely no score. So, which like may seem like a detraction. Like on YouTube, there's this person who's like, Alice 1988 with music, and then I'm listening to it, and it's like, well, I kind of like prefer the version without sound because it feels like I'm there. It's like just absolutely silent, and then there's like just her telling the story secondhand as her dream goes on. I thought it was so good.
I know the animator who you're talking about.
Yeah, I forgot his name.
He's like Polish.
Yeah.
He's a Polish animator, but he does I need to give a disclaimer. This adaptation of Alice is horrifying. Like, it's scary to look at. I think he uses like even like a dead rabbit for it's really crazy. I'm gonna have to put it in the show notes or shout it out on my social media afterwards, but Bill something maybe? I don't remember.
It starts with a J.
Oh, Jan Svankmajer. But yeah, that's definitely still worth watching.
Yeah, I don't know. I think those are my top as of now.
Those are great recommendations. Everybody should go watch all of those and consume all of those. But Frankie, where can people find you on social media?
I'm most active on my Instagram, which is Sloopy, SLOOPY__. I don't know. Are there 2 underscores? Someone tell me. But yeah, Sloopy. I also have Twitter and whatever, but yeah, YouTube. But yeah.
And I know you're not gonna plug this yourself, but I know you have a Patreon now.
Oh, haha.
for Lonnie, for the film you're making, which I think is really great. It's only $1 a month, and you get to see the behind the scenes stuff that you're doing for this 30-minute film, which is really cool. I think that's something everybody should be on.
Thank you.
Where can people find that? It's on your Instagram, right?
Yeah, it's the link in my Instagram bio. So yeah, I would love if I got paid more per month. Yeah,
that'd be awesome.
But yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you so much, Frankie, for being on. This has been a really great conversation. I always enjoy talking to you, and I always feel really good you invigorate my sense of purpose in filmmaking whenever I talk to you. So it's always a joy to talk to you. And thank you so much for being on. Everybody go follow Frankie on social media, Sloopy, and tune in next week for I believe next week is, I'm not gonna spoil it. You know what? You're just gonna have to watch it. But yes, please come back. We love you. All right. Bye.
Bye.